Well, let me once again welcome you and thank you for your support for our Global Food Policy Report. This is our fourth volume, fourth edition. So I have seen lots of familiar faces here for the last 4 years. So this year, we will highlight some of the issues that is related to post-2015 agenda. We have made strong progress for the last 2 decades. So today, the hunger has been reduced by half from 1990 to today. So it was about 19%. Today it's 11%. And I guess next year, when you have the new data from FAO, I'm very confident it will be 10%, even less, because of the lower food prices and many other factors. We have also made a progress in terms of reducing extreme poverty. In 1990, the poverty rate was 36%. Today is much less than 16%. Actually, we achieved 16% in 2010. So we achieved MDG 1 goal A 5 years ahead of schedule. And we are almost on track on MDG B. That is to reduce the percentage of hungry people between 1990 and 2015. We have also seen strong economic growth, particularly in low-income countries and middle-income countries. Yes, the growth rate in Europe, in US is much slower. Growth rate is actually half of that of middle-income countries and low-income countries. We have also seen very stable food prices for the last 4 years. You might remember in 2007, 2008, the food prices skyrocketed, doubled, tripled in a matter of 6 months and a year. But for the last 4 years, the food prices have been very stable, in fact, very low. And I guarantee you, the poor people, particularly poor consumers, have benefited from that. But for 2014, the results are mixed. We made some progress in terms of commit ourselves to nutrition. The various events is evidence. Then we have also understand more about the role of water, sanitation, and hygiene. So without improving all these factors, we will not be able to reduce child stunting. Global Nutrition Report clearly states this is the case. Yes, we also have seen the new commitment on trade. India and the US finally agreed to sign the trade facilitation agreement. That saved the WTO. And increased attention to resilience. Many of you attended our conference in May in Addis. We really put resilience high in the development agenda. I know USAID and other partners are going to have another event in Addis Ababa in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, maybe next week, to really push the resilience even a little bit further. And we know that global food system has become very, very vulnerable. So resilience is key to reduce that vulnerability. Focus on family farming. 2014 is a year of family farming. 500 smallholders are basically family farm. 1.5 billion people live on small farms. And they account for majority of poor and hungry people today. But that does not mean we just spend all the money to keep the smallholders there. So how can we really help the smallholders to move up, engage in high-value production, and then move out? For some smallholders, because of lack of land, lack of access to markets, poor soil, how can we design certain program to move them out? So move up and move out. For 2014, we continue to see some vulnerabilities, persistent conflicts. Today, we have seen increased correlation between the conflicts and the malnutrition or undernutrition. It is in some of the conflict countries where we have observed the increase of malnutrition, despite the fact that at a global level we have made tremendous progress. Re-emerging zoonotic disease. We know that Ebola has killed more than 10,000 people, but don't forget, more people are suffering from hunger and malnutrition because of the disruption in production, marketing, and trade. So that sort of impact will be permanent. So it's not just a one-off. So in the next several years or even decades, the children who have suffered from malnutrition will compromise their mental and physical health for their whole life. The continued extreme weather shocks, droughts, floods, cyclones, and rising food safety scandals, starting from Taiwan, it's oil, milk, meat contamination. And as the countries become even more urbanized, industrialized, this sort of food scares will become more often. And then we know that the food safety has detrimental impact on children's health and nutrition status. And in addition, well, obviously, the impact on adults. Higher prices of nutritious foods. Despite the decline of food prices in general, we have observed in many parts of the world the price of vegetables, fruits, and to some extent, meat products, milk, have actually risen. But we also have enough hopes for 2015. SDG is the greatest hope. So how can we really transit from MDGs to SDG, Sustainable Development Goals? Right now, there are 17 goals, 169 targets. So my key message is how can we really place hunger, malnutrition, poverty at the top of the priority? To eliminate extreme poverty by 2030, eliminate hunger, malnutrition before that, maybe 2025. Then we also have heard very good news. China and the US signed the climate agreement, promised themselves to make sure that the carbon emission will not peak beyond 2030. And Global Alliance for Climate Smart Agriculture, the science, policy, and the NGOs came together to commit themselves to improve their farming practice to reduce carbon emission. ICN2 probably is one of the biggest events we have seen for years in terms of addressing malnutrition and hunger. Many people were there and committed themselves. I see many of them in the room went there, committed themselves to reduce hunger and malnutrition through a comprehensive approach. So it's not just agriculture, it's not just food, sanitation, healthcare, gender, so all these factors matter. Most exciting things usually happen in the country. Yeah, this is what my heart is with. So in Latin America has become a powerhouse in producing food and grains, and is one of the largest exporters of grains, including soybean, in feeding a lots of population in Asia. China imports 70 million tons of soybean from Brazil, US, and Argentina. South-South learning is one of the big initiatives led by Brazil and others. So how the experience in Latin America, particularly Brazil, can be shared with Africa. Then move back to Africa. Biggest event is Malabo, where the African leaders commit themselves to end hunger by 2025. So this is a daunting task. But I'm confident if the African leaders come together to change their behavior, to ensure mutual accountability, so they will be able to achieve that. Building on the CAADP, the 6% agriculture growth to 10% budget allocation. I think we made a tremendous progress on that. So now the question is how can we combine all this program together to end hunger by 2025? East Asia, South Asia, I have already mentioned, the inflation is a big problem. Particularly the price of the fruits and the vegetables have risen. These are very nutritious foods. But some good news is these countries begin to reform their age social protection system. So we need social protection, but this system must be targeted, must be improved to be more efficient, targeted to poorest poor, and targeted to improve their nutrition and their long-term development. The key message of this report of the 2014-2015 report is MICs, middle income countries. We know that Africa, South Asia, low income countries are our priorities. But let's not forget, let's do not neglect middle income countries. They are economic powerhouses, but they account for almost half of the hungry people. China, India, Brazil, Mexico, Indonesia, and beyond. I just want to show you some figures here. China, Indonesia still have very large percentage of undernourishment, and India as well. In terms of child stunting, look at India and Indonesia. Almost half, 40% of the children are stunted. And another dimension of the malnutrition is increased obesity and overweight. So look at the share of Mexico, look at the share of Brazil. More than 50% of the population is either obese or overweight. China, India, and Brazil are catching up very quickly. So the growth of the obesity and overweight in this country is actually much higher than the economic growth rates. Well, obviously, these countries are very different, but they have some common feature. One is rising inequalities. Second is urbanization and changing consumer preferences. Third, lack of focus on nutrition, poor targeting, and safety nets. So you can see multiple burdens of malnutrition coexist in these emerging economies in these middle-income countries. Now the question is, how can we help them to accelerate the progress? Reshape their agriculture for nutrition and health. So it's not just self-sufficient, more rice, more wheat. So it's nutrition, it's health. Reduce inequalities, focus on gender and smallholders. As I said, smallholders still play a key role in India, in China, in Indonesia. Without solving their problem, we will not be able to eliminate hunger, malnutrition in these countries. Improve rural infrastructure, particularly sanitation. Sanitation is one of the key factors in reducing child stunting, particularly in India, Bangladesh. And expand effective social safety nets and make sure that the social safety nets linked to nutrition and health outcome. So finally, facilitate South and South knowledge sharing. So I have an argument that I come from China. So China's food security actually is world food security. We know that China has more than 20% of the population. On the other hand, if there is a food security issue at a global level, then China's food security will also be affected. So China's food security is global food security. Global food security is also China's food security. This can also apply to India, to some extent to Brazil and Indonesia. Well, we have seen all these initiatives, commitments, but we need knowledge to support these initiatives. Last November, IFPRI committed to set up an initiative called Compact 2025 to produce knowledge, information, promote innovation, reduce hunger, malnutrition, by supporting many other initiatives, including Sun Initiative, scaling up nutrition, including ICN2 follow-ups, including Feed the Future, including 1,000 Days, whatever initiatives. All this needs support. So thank you very much.